Let's talk about what's happened, what's been announced. First of all, I want to be clear. Lordstown, I think you have over 1,600 of those employees. That 15,000 are going to come straight out of your district. And that's just GM itself, not the suppliers and things, because there are other jobs as well. But at this point, what are the prospects of turning that around or changing it?
Well, I don't think very good in the short term at all. There are union contracts that need to get negotiated over the course of the next, I think, 7, 8, 9 months. And so that's going to determine where new products go and all the rest. So that it's unallocated is the technical term. There's nothing allocated to the Lordstown plant right now. So hopefully through the negotiations we can maybe pick something back up. But you know, that's the hard part, is we're going to lose a lot of quality, not just quality workers, but quality human beings that go to our churches and coach our Little League teams and are part of our booster clubs for football teams and all the rest. A lot of those people are going to end up leaving.
So as you and I have talked about before, I'm from Flint, Michigan, so I've seen layoffs, goodness knows. I've been there, I've seen it happen, and it is tragic for those families. But did something go wrong here, or is this just the natural consequences of a free market economy where there is creative destruction, as it's called?
Well, yeah, I think part of it, of course, is the free market working. There's no question about it, and what the small car market looks like and all the rest. But the reality of it is, for a long time, the American economy and the American government has not had a comprehensive industrial policy where we have public-private partnerships that are working together on the new technologies, whether it's in the auto sector, whether it's in healthcare, energy, or all the rest. And how do we start directing some of these investments into these distressed communities? I'll say this here today on your show. I'm not convinced that Wall Street or a lot of the money centers in the United States understand the depth of pain and frustration and anxiety in the communities like Flint or Youngstown. This has been going on for 40 years. And if we don't start coming together with an integrated policy, public and private, pushing investments. As you know, 80% of venture capital goes to 3 states, California, New York, and Massachusetts. That's a death knell for the Midwest. And we have got to get private sector investment back into these communities, but it needs to work closely with government to do that.
And is that federal government? Is that state government? Is that local government? What's the best way to get that done?
Well, the federal government has a unique opportunity because it has a national tax code. It has the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Health and Human Services, where we can start working closely with the private sector. And the problem today is you're either on the government side in politics or you're on the free market side in politics. And the reality of it is we need to integrate that and get back to the center where it's a blend of public and private, like when we went to the moon, or like DARPA came up with the internet. These kind of huge research projects, infrastructure, broadband. I mean, these communities are falling apart, and the government has to play a leadership role, but you got to have the private sector come in at some point.
I suspect, Congressman, if we had Mary Barr here, the CEO of General Motors, she would say, listen, part of the reason I'm doing this is to get the money to invest in the future, to invest in electric vehicles, to invest in autonomous vehicles, to train people up to do those things. What would you say to her? Is she wrong?
Well, I understand that. I wish we would have had a longer-term plan. Again, this is why I think the government has to be involved, because pulling these people out of Lordstown, Ohio, out of Youngstown, Ohio, not just the 1,600 jobs, but as you mentioned, the 4 to 5 to 6 times the multiplier. So now you're talking about 10,000 jobs in a region. That's not good for anybody. That's not good for the local economy. It's not good for the federal government. And so having a better relationship with these corporations, saying, okay, you know, these sectors of the economy are booming. They could grow, and maybe it's not in auto. Maybe it's in wind and solar, which are each growing at 25, 30% a year. Maybe it's in additive manufacturing, which is growing at 25 or 30% a year. But if we don't get private investment into these communities, we're in trouble. So yeah, you're going to have the creative destruction. You're going to have comparative advantages. You're going to have long-term investments. But when it consistently drains out of workers' pockets, when it consistently drains out of places like the industrial Midwest, and then they take the money and they invest it in Silicon Valley for, whether it's autonomous cars or whatever the next generation is. Right. How long can this go on? I mean, this is crazy what we're doing here. And I want people who watch shows like the one you're on, you've got to realize the depth of problem we have now in the South and in the industrial Midwest. And we've got to come together, business and labor, to solve these problems.
It's very compelling. Finally, let me ask you about the leadership of the Democratic Party, which is particularly important right now in the House. You're going back into the majority, as it were. It looks very likely that Nancy Pelosi will become back, actually, as Speaker of the House. But at the same time, nobody's challenging her. Why is that? And what does that mean about developing a bench for your future leadership? At some point, you have to have some renewal.
Well, it's the establishment, quite frankly. I mean, it's the establishment of the Democratic Party that has circled the wagons, and it's a hard nut to crack. I've tried last time, this time. It's a very difficult nut to crack, but there are 35 people who have said that they're not supportive, and so we'll see how that goes down on the House floor in a month. But there are some new leaders that are emerging, but they're in the lower level stages of our House leadership. And I will mention there's nobody from the Midwest in the top, I think, 7 slots in our leadership. So we've got a lot of work to do in the Democratic Party as well. But hopefully in the next coming months and years, we'll see some new leaders emerge here in Congress.